Is Alex Palmer. Alex is from the Malthouse, which is run by the Kenwood Trust, a leading alcohol and drug rehabilitation centre. Alex, good morning. Welcome to Ashdown Radio.
Very good morning. Super excited to be here. Thanks for having me.
Good to have you. Tell us just briefly about the Kenwood Trust and the Malthouse and how they link together.
Yeah, so the Kenwood Trust is a residential rehabilitation centre up in Yalding, just outside Maidstone, where residents would come for initially 3 months for drug and alcohol substance misuse issues, and then following on from there they would have the opportunity to go to the lodge, which is also on the same site, for a period of 3 months. That's a little less intense, is a little bit more independent, whereas the initial service is like groups. It's a very therapeutic environment, one-to-ones, and then so following on from the independent living of the lodge, people, if they're moving along and would like to stay with us, they have the option to go to a MoveOn. We have several MoveOns in and around the southeast, Maidstone, Tunbridge Wells, and Uckfield being one of them.
And the Uckfield one is called the Malthouse.
It is, and I'm very proud to manage that place.
And how long have you been there, Alex?
I've been at Kenwood since November 2020.
Right.
And I've been managing the Malthouse specifically since May of last year.
What's your background?
So I have a background of working in the field of homelessness, substance misuse, mental health. Started off in London in 2002, so coming on 20 years.
So, rewarding role, something positive to see people come through, and you get them out the other end in a positive way.
Yeah, incredibly rewarding, incredibly challenging. Even the rewarding bits are quite challenging, but. As is the case with substance misuse, mental health, that are intrinsically linked, it's very seldom a smooth path, and so there's lots of challenges there. But it's a hugely rewarding job. Our residents are incredible. We have an amazing staff team up there, and I feel really fortunate. Despite it being quite a difficult environment to work in sometimes, with relapse and people that have struggles with mental health and addiction, it feels like a real privilege to be there personally.
And I guess often the two things go together as well.
Yeah, most definitely. The age-old question of what came first, the substance misuse or say the mental health. A lot of our residents have had a history of struggling to get, say, mental health treatment because of the substance misuse. They're not able to manage their mental health because of the substance misuse, but mental health services have not always been willing to work with people under the influence, but they can't stop being under the influence because of their mental health. So it's a bit of a vicious cycle.
And is it true to say that when somebody has this type of problem, the first step, the most difficult step, is the admission, I have a problem? Is that true?
I think so, and it's often said that an addict, if somebody identifies as an addict or somebody with substance misuse issues, is usually the last person to kind of realise. Everyone around them can see as their world's falling apart, but it's usually the individual themselves. But it does need to get to a point where the individual realises this can't go on, I need help, and not just to recognise that, but then to take that step. That's the kind of key part of moving into action, as it were. So
before they come to you, and we talked about the Malthouse in a second, they go to your main centre. How do people get referred in? Is it through the GP route?
So there's a number of ways doing it. So through our main treatment centre, people usually come through a drug and alcohol service like CGL. They'll have a care manager, a drug and alcohol service that will facilitate that application, and also look at funding. Whereas the lodge, people can come straight in from the lodge. It's not just the people from the main house that come to the lodge for the period of 3 months to live a little bit more independently. People can come straight into the lodge, and that was set up in response to COVID for people that had no access to support due to housing, and people can refer to the lodge.
And then the next stage is coming to the MoveOn centre, like the Malthouse. So what happens when people come to the Malthouse? What do you do there?
Well, the idea is that when they come to the Malthouse, we're supporting them to get community ready, to get landlord ready, to carry on their recovery in the community through meaningful activity, ideally through mutual aid groups, for example, Narcotics Anonymous, Alcoholics Anonymous. There's also smart recovery, but also meaningful activity during the day, like volunteering, liaising with their family, doing some nice things, working on their physical health, working on their mental health, and making their recovery kind of worthwhile. And the way that I do that is looking at what's important to the residents, so trying to marry it up. Not trying to fit square peg in a round hole, but trying to know what excites people about life and kind of support them to work towards their recovery with those things.
So understand the individual needs, because I guess at the end of the day, everybody's different.
Yeah, without any doubt.
And traditionally, sort of, how long does somebody stay in stage 3 in the Malthouse? Is it a few months? Is it longer? How does that work?
Well, if you want to have a local connection and then apply for local housing through Wealdon Council, there's a minimum of 2 years. But we have people that leave because actually they go back to live with their families, or they feel that it's not for them. Sometimes we have people that relapse and leave, or asked to leave. So it can vary, but ultimately I'd like people to move in and be able to create a local connection and kind of build some roots in the local area.
And you follow something I think called the 12-step programme. What's that about?
So we have a service at Kenwood, 12 steps, based on the 12 steps of Narcotics Anonymous and Alcoholics Anonymous, and it's a 12-step program by its name, and it's a course designed for living. It was set up in the 40s, and it's encouraging people to kind of look at their behaviours, looking at the fact that they can't keep themselves sober, that they need help, and steps 4 and 5 are really important in terms of going through past history, past behaviours, looking at character defects, and they say clearing the wreckage of your past, as it were, but a bridge to normal living, as it's described.
But percentage-wise, what's your success rate of people going through these sort of programmes? Do you have any sort of figures at all?
Well, I know for the 12 steps, it's an 85% success rate, which is good, which is incredibly high.
Yeah.
So, yeah, it's but if we're dealing with a service around individuals, it's very hard to quantify stats sometimes, because you might get a group come in that go particularly well together, or it might fall apart. It ebbs and flows, ultimately.
And you are a charity, I believe, aren't you?
We are a charity, so we are, one of the things that we always say to organisations, and when we have opportunities like this, is that if there are any organisations that are having fundraising events, to consider Kenwood Trust being, their charity of choice.
Right, okay. And I think you got a birthday this year as well, haven't you? Not you personally, but the organisation.
No, not me.
I'm sure you've got one.
I have one every year. We're 55 this year, which is exciting if we think about the work that we've done and how we have grown, and the lives that we have helped change, and given people the platform, ideally, to empower themselves, really. We're not doing it for people, we're doing it with people. Yeah.
A great job that you do there. And if somebody's listening and this is ringing a few bells to either them personally or somebody they know, and they need to find out more, how do they do that? Yeah, I would suggest that people go through the Kenwood Trust website. Kenwood, it's actually KENWARD Trust. So that's www.kenwoodtrust.org.uk. And that's got all the information there, and that's your starting point. Yep. Thank you for talking about that today. Have we covered everything to do with the trust? Because I wanted to just touch on something about you personally in a second. Yeah, sure. I did want to say that, we've expanded a lot in the last 6 months. We've got a new MoveOn property opening in Wateringbury that we're incredibly excited about. We're always on the lookout for affordable accommodation, houses of multiple occupancy. The Malthouse is 15 residents. Our smallest property is 3. So if anybody has any accommodation that they can offer us that we could use as MoveOn properties for our residents in the southeast, we would absolutely love to hear from them. And once again, contact via the website. Yep, and also I just wanted to say that we have an amazing youth service that deliver like an intervention and prevention program called Think Differently, and we visited I think 5,500 students recently to kind of discuss the work that we do, and the feedback from them has been excellent, like really important work. And of course, a busy and challenging role for you personally. So in your downtime, you've got a bit of a special hobby, haven't you? Yeah, I sing. I was very fortunate enough during lockdown to do a musical. So I think for me, music's been one of my big passions and a big part of like my own personal therapy. Okay, a good escape from the day job, so to speak. So you're singing in a folk band or folk group? Yeah, it's been difficult with COVID, but yeah, I sing in a modern folk band. Okay, so let's get you to introduce your track then. Okay, well, thank you very much for having me. And this is my favourite song ever. This is Iris by the Goo Goo Dolls.